Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, I am Dr. Rose, Assistant Professor, Department of Anatomy, Government Medical College, Thrissur. Today we will be discussing about the topic twinning. Before moving on to the topic proper, let's discuss a very short case. A 30-year-old lady got pregnant for the third time. Since her previous pregnancies were uneventful, she decided to consult her gynecologist for the third time in her 4th month of gestation period. But this time the situation was a little bit different. The gynecologist expected some malformations for the fetuses and asked her to terminate pregnancy, and this was the case. The condition was known as craniopagus or fusion of heads. In order to know the details of this, you should know how a twinning happens. So in this session, we will be dealing with twinning under the following headings. How will you define the process of twinning? What do you mean by monozygotic twins? What do you mean by dizygotic twins? And how will you get a conjoined twin? And what do you mean by parasitic twins? And a little bit of applied aspects. So first, let's see what do you mean by twinning. If two offsprings are conceived in a single pregnancy, that process is known as twinning, and the incidence is said to be 1 in 80 births. The incidence increases with age of the mother as well as with the infertility treatments. And what do you mean by triplets? If you get 3 offsprings in single pregnancy, you call it as triplets, and if you get 4 offsprings in a single pregnancy, you call it as quadruplets. Now, twinning is classified into dizygotic, that is otherwise known as fraternal twins, or monozygotic, that is otherwise known as identical twins. First, let us see what do you mean by dizygotic twins or fraternal twins. This is more common and it is about 90% in occurrence. This happens when there is simultaneous shedding of 2 oocytes in a single ovarian cycle, and it is fertilized by 2 different sperms. This is what happens in a dizygotic twin. That is, in an ovulatory cycle, usually there is only secretion of 1 ovum, but in this case there will be 2 oocytes secreted in a single ovarian cycle, and these 2 oocytes will be fertilized by 2 different sperms. So as a result, you will be getting 2 different zygotes, and these 2 zygotes will be getting implanted separately in the endometrial wall, but they will be having different genetic constitution and the twins won't be looking alike. This is just as the siblings in a family, but this time the siblings are actually living in the same intrauterine period. So let us see, you have 1 sperm and 1 ovum which is getting fertilized as zygote number 1, and you have another sperm which is getting fertilized with another ovum, and you get the second zygote. Together these 2 zygotes are getting implanted in the uterine cavity. This is what is happening during the formation of dizygotic twins or fraternal twins. So what are the features? They will be of same sex or different sex, and you have different sorts of combinations, among which twin boys are the most common combination and twin girls are the least common combination. They will be having separate placenta. In this figure you can see the 2 twins, they will be having 2 separate placenta and 2 different chorionic sacs. This is the placenta of this twin and this is the placenta of this twin, and these are the chorionic sacs. We can see that the chorionic sacs are actually separate for each twin. Now what are the other features? They will be having different genetic constitution. And the placenta will be sometimes lying close to each other, and as a result they might get fused. In some cases there will be some genetically dissimilar group of cells within the body of the non-identical twins. Such a condition is known as chimera. And the examples are, sometimes the dizygotic twins will be possessing two types of RBCs, and this condition is known as erythrocyte mosaicism. And this happens when there is an exchange of RBCs among the twins. So, this condition is known as chimera. Now, let us see what do you mean by a monozygotic twin, or this is otherwise known as identical twin or like twins. And this is 1/4 of all different types of twinning, and it occurs about 3 to 4 per 1000 live births. This happens when an oocyte is fertilized by one single sperm, and later the zygote will be splitting up to form the twins. So, what could be the features of a monozygotic twin? They will be having identical genetic constitution because the twins derived from a single zygote. They will be having similar appearance and structure. This is the sperm which is fertilizing the ovum, and these two will be giving rise to a single zygote. Further, what happens is this single zygote will be splitting into two and they will be getting implanted. Monozygotic twins are classified according to the splitting of zygotes in various stages of development. So, the first classification is monozygotic bichorionic. What do you mean by monozygotic bichorionic? You can see that we have twins here, but they are having different chorionic cavity. They are not sharing a single chorionic cavity. So, this is known as monozygotic bichorionic. They are derived from a single zygote, but still they are having two different chorionic cavities. This is almost like that of a dizygotic twin. So, how will you differentiate between a monozygotic twin and a dizygotic twin? In case of monozygotic twin, they will be having same genetic constitution, but whereas in dizygotic twins, they won't be having same genetic constitution. Now, this is another pattern of monozygotic twins. Here you call it as monochorionic biamniotic. You just focus on this picture. You can see that the chorionic cavity is single. That is why it is known as monochorionic. But you can see two different amniotic cavities. So, the fetuses are lying in two different amniotic cavities. This condition is known as monochorionic, but it is biamniotic. Another variety of monozygotic twin is monochorionic monoamniotic. What do you mean by monochorionic monoamniotic? You can see the two twins, but they are sharing a single chorionic cavity and a single amniotic cavity. So, the twins are lying in a single chorionic cavity and a single amniotic cavity. That is what is meant by monochorionic monoamniotic. Now, in the monochorionic monoamniotic twins, you have to expect some of the complications. They are known as the formation of conjoined twins and the formation of parasitic twins. So, this is in a nutshell about the different patterns of formation of monozygotic twins. The first variety is known as monozygotic bichorionic biamniotic. You can see that all these twins are derived from a single zygote. Splitting happens at different stages of development. So, the first one you can see that this is known as monozygotic, since it is derived from a single zygote, but it is bichorionic. That means they are having different chorionic cavity, and it is also known as biamniotic because the fetuses are not sharing their amniotic cavity. The second variety which we discussed was known as monozygotic, monochorionic and biamniotic. What does that mean? They are having a single chorionic cavity, but the amniotic cavities are different. So, in the first case, they had their own chorionic cavity and their own amniotic cavity. That is why this is known as bichorionic and biamniotic, but in this condition you can see that they are sharing a single chorionic cavity, but still the amniotic cavity they are sharing separately. Now, the third variety is known as monozygotic, monochorionic and monoamniotic. That means both twins are sharing the chorionic cavity and amniotic cavity. So, as a result, they are having only one chorionic cavity and one amniotic cavity. So, these are the three different patterns of monozygotic twins. So, let us see in detail how this happens. If the division happens at the 2-cell stage or even up to morula, that means before the formation of inner cell mass, this is when we get the formation of monozygotic dichorionic and diamniotic twins. And this is said to be the earliest stage of separation, and this happens in 25 to 30% of monozygotic twins. In this condition, the cells are capable of developing into a complete embryo. Suppose you imagine this is a cluster of cells which has not yet differentiated. That means it is in the earliest stages of separation. So, if you just cut it into two, both groups of cells are capable of developing into a complete embryo. So, that will be similar to that of a dizygotic twin. So, two cells or two groups of cells will develop independently and they will be forming monozygotic twins. So, as a result, each embryo will be having its own placenta, its own amniotic cavity and its own chorionic cavity. That is why we call it as monozygotic, since it is developed from a single group of cells, dichorionic because they are having its own placenta, they are not sharing their placenta, and diamniotic, that means they are having their own amniotic cavity, they are not sharing their amniotic cavity. So, this condition will be looking as much as the same as that of dizygotic twins. The only difference is dizygotic twins, they will not be genetically similar, but in case of monozygotic twins, they will be genetically similar since they are derived from a single group of cells. Now, let us see the next stage, that is, if the splitting is late and the splitting is happening after the formation of inner cell mass, you can see that the group of cells have differentiated into an inner cell mass and an outer cell mass. So, suppose at this stage if the division happens, what could be the result? Here we can see that the blastocyst cavity has already been developed. So, what will happen in this condition? In this condition, you can see that the placenta is almost shared. That means they will be having a monochorionic cavity. That means the chorionic cavity will be the same for both the fetuses, because the division is happening within the single chorionic cavity. The inner cell mass is going to divide. So, the chorionic cavity has already been formed and the division happens inside. That means they will be having a monochorionic cavity, but the amniotic cavity is not yet formed. So, they will be having two different amniotic cavities, and the incidence is said to be 70 to 75%. Here the inner cell mass will split into two within the same blastocyst cavity. That is the science behind the monozygotic, monochorionic but biamniotic twins. The two embryos will be having as a result a common placenta, but still they will be having a common chorionic cavity, but they will be having a separate amniotic cavity. You can see that they will be having a common chorionic cavity, but still they are having a separate amniotic cavity. Let us see the third version. What is the third version? If the splitting is happening after the formation of bilaminar germ disc, we have already discussed that the inner cell mass is already formed in the previous case. But the inner cell mass, if it is getting differentiated into bilaminar germ disc, at this stage if the splitting happens, you will be getting monozygotic, monochorionic and monoamniotic. Why you are getting monoamniotic? Because when the division is happening at the formation of bilaminar germ disc, there the amniotic cavity has already been formed. So, if at this stage the division is happening, then you will be getting the two fetuses within a single amniotic cavity. So, as a result, they will be having a single chorionic cavity and a single amniotic cavity. So, you call it as monozygotic, monochorionic and monoamniotic. And the incidence is said to be 1 to 2%. Here the splitting happens, as we have already discussed, during the formation of bilaminar germ disc, that is just before the appearance of the primitive streak. And what are the features of the two fetuses? The two fetuses will be having a common chorionic cavity, they will be having a common amniotic cavity, and they will be having a common placenta, but still the blood supply is usually well balanced. Now, we will move on to another set of monozygotic twins. Actually, this can be discussed as the complications which you can expect. So, the complications during the formation of this type of twins are conjoined twins, the formation of conjoined twins and the formation of parasitic twins. Why you get a set of conjoined twins or why you get a set of parasitic twins? First we will discuss what is happening during the formation of conjoined twins, or sometimes this is actually known as double monsters. Though it is painful, it is known as double monsters. So, when will you get conjoined twins or double monsters? This is actually a complication, as we have already discussed, which is coming under monozygotic twins. Here what happens is the splitting occurs after the formation of two organizing centers within the same germ disc. That means we have the germ disc already formed and there you have two organizing centers. So, what usually happens is the two embryos won't be separated completely. That means two embryos are incompletely separated. So, let us see what is going to happen. If they are incompletely separated, they will be still having equal size, but based on the separation, where at which point they are getting separated, we have different patterns. So, they can be separated if they have no vital parts shared among these two fetuses. So, if they are actually born with fused body parts, if they are not having the vital parts shared, we can separate them and they will be growing as two individuals. But if they are having the vital parts shared, it is difficult to separate the fetuses or the newborns. So, let us see the different patterns of fusion. Based on the level of fusion, we have 4 types. The first pattern is known as craniopagus. This was actually the case with which we started the session. Craniopagus means we have the fusion of heads. You can see the two fetuses which are incompletely separated and the fusion is actually at the head portion. The remaining body parts are separated, but there is fusion at the head. And this is another variety of conjoined twins. You call it as thoracopagus. What do you mean by thoracopagus? You can see that at the region of thorax, the twins are fused. This condition is known as thoracopagus. Another variety which we come across under the heading of conjoined twins is cephalothoracopagus. As the word implies, cephalo means head, thoraco means thorax. So, if the fusion happens at the head as well as in the thoracic region, you call it as cephalothoracopagus. And the last variety under the heading of conjoined twins is pygopagus. What do you mean by pygopagus? If the fusion happens at the sacral region, you call it as pygopagus. Still there are many patterns of fusion, but these are the 4 major types of fusion which are classified under conjoined twins. Now, what do you mean by a parasitic twin? Actually, one of the conjoined twins becomes rudimentary due to diminished blood supply. That is, there will be difference in the blood supply between the twins. So, one will be actually growing at the expense of the other. That is what is meant by parasitic twin. So, the parasitic twin actually grows like a parasite from the body of the well developed twin. So, this will be the appearance. You will be getting a normal twin, but a portion of the other twin will be seen as a parasite attached to the well developed co-twin. There is another condition known as fetus in fetu. Here the parasitic twin, instead of jutting out from the body of the normal twin, will be completely enclosed within the body of the co-twin. So, this is actually what is meant by fetus in fetu. That is, the parasitic twin will be completely embedded within the body of the normal twin. This condition is known as fetus in fetu. There is another interesting fact that is known as vanishing twin. What do you mean by vanishing twin? That means if a lady goes to consult her gynecologist in her first trimester, the gynecologist will be revealing the news that she is having twin pregnancy, and he or she will be showing the ultrasound like this. So, this is first twin and this is the second twin. But at times what happens is there will be death of one of the twins in the first trimester itself. Remaining visits during the antenatal checkups, when she undergoes ultrasound for the second time, the doctor will be revealing a report that only one fetus is present. That condition is known as vanishing twin. That means there will be death of the other fetus. So, dead fetus may either disappear or sometimes will be remaining as fetus papyraceous. So, this condition is known as fetus papyraceous. So, in the initial pregnancy, so that is in the first trimester, you will be having two twins, two fetuses in the intrauterine cavity, but later when you look for the twins, one will be actually absent. So, that is the death of the other twin, and sometimes this will disappear or sometimes it will be seen as fetus papyraceous. Now, let us see another process, that is what is known as superfecundation. What do you mean by superfecundation? Normally during an ovulatory cycle, there will be release of one single ova. Suppose, have you ever thought what will happen, there is discharge of multiple ova in a single ovarian cycle, and what will happen if it is fertilized by sperms from two or more different male partners? That is what is meant by superfecundation, and this is actually seen in polyovulatory mammals and it is not common in human beings. So, this is a single ova and these are the oocytes which are liberated during one ovarian cycle. And what happens? This is the first male partner and this is the second male partner, and they are sending their sperms, and what is happening is most of the oocytes which are released in a single ovulatory cycle will be fertilized by different sperms. It can be of the same partner or different partners. Such a condition is known as superfecundation, and this is actually seen in polyovulatory mammals and this is not common in human beings. Another interesting topic is known as superfetation. What do you mean by superfetation? Normally what happens is, if a lady conceives, in the subsequent months she won't be having any ovulation. That means the ovulatory cycle won't be functioning. Suppose in the second month after she gets conceived, if there is ovulation, what will happen? Sometimes the sperm will be fertilizing that ovum. So, the oocytes will be fertilized at the subsequent period. So, what will happen? You already have one ovum which is released during the ovulatory cycle, and that will be normally fertilized by one sperm, and you will be getting the zygote formed which is getting implanted in the uterine cavity. Simultaneously, in the second month, what will happen is the ovum will be again released, and this oocyte will be fertilized by another sperm and you will be getting another zygote formed. So, this will be implanted after the first zygote. So, inside the single uterine cavity you will be getting two zygotes getting implanted, but at different stages of development. So, what will happen is the embryos will be at different stages of development. This usually happens when there is aberrant ovulation during pregnancy. Normally during pregnancy you won't be getting ovulation, but if there is any aberrant ovulation during pregnancy, you will be getting embryos at different stages of development in a single uterine cavity. Such a condition is known as superfetation. So, to summarize, we have discussed about the process known as twinning, how this happens. We have discussed about the different patterns of monozygotic twins, when will you get the different patterns of monozygotic twins, and we have discussed about what do you mean by a dizygotic twin, what are the complications you expect in monozygotic twins, that is when will you get conjoined twins or double monsters, or what do you mean by parasitic twins, and we have already discussed about the applied aspects like superfecundation and superfetation. So, this is all about twinning in a nutshell. Thank you.